Hello and welcome to Quays News. I'm Mia.
And I'm Tabitha. Our top story today, a man who waited 3 days in A&E says he was in unbearable pain.
Harvey James, who has diabetes, should have been seen within 10 hours to get his appendix removed.
I've been to speak to him about his ordeal. Prior to the pandemic in 2020, there were already 4.4 million people on a waiting list for care, and now the latest figures in January 2023 show around 7.2 million people are now waiting for treatment on the NHS. There are many NHS patients struggling, waiting for operations or even to be seen to by a doctor. I've spoken to Harvey James, a patient in Crumpsall NHS Hospital who has recently had an interesting experience in A&E. Can you describe to me what A&E was actually like that day you was there?
Well, when we first got there, it was really busy and very crowded. We first got seen to, and then we were sat down and was waiting over 40 hours to get put on a bed.
So how long did it actually take for you to get the operation?
Well, they first initially told me that it'd be the morning after when I first got there, so I had to not eat, I think it's 13 hours before you get surgery or something like that. So I had to starve myself all day, and then just before I went to sleep, they come down and told me that it was going to be, they wouldn't be able to get me in, so it had to be the day after. So then I had a couple of hours to eat, and then I had to wait again all day, no eating, and then got let down again, and it was actually then the day after when I ended up getting it.
I spoke to Dr. Helena O'Flynn, who's currently working as a GP in Bowling Medical Practice in Wythenshawe, about the situation.
There's lots of what we call triage ongoing. So triage essentially means where we're looking at the referrals and the patients and seeing who needs to be seen in the most urgent manner. So that's being done at a much higher level and more effectively to make sure that those that are most urgent get seen first.
The strikes, how do they impact the waiting times as well?
Yeah, so obviously there's been about 2 episodes of doctor strikes so far, and I know the nurses have, I think, done 2 or 3 strikes, and the ambulance staff have as well. Obviously, when that happens, when the healthcare workforce go on strike, there's obviously a concern that there's not as many staff on the ground, people might not get seen as quickly. So obviously that does add a pressure on, and because of that, the hospitals have to plan for that. So often they do have to cancel like routine appointments and surgeries, obviously to make sure that staff are put in an emergency setting so that people get the patient care that they need.
Tabitha Crowther, the University of Salford. It's the most famous street in the country and home to our most popular soap opera.
Coronation Street has never been afraid of tackling the big issues. On screen now, Amy Barlow's storyline is around consent.
Actress Ellie Mulvaney, who plays Amy, has been speaking to Gracie Jones, whose reports contains themes about consent you might find upsetting.
So were you nervous to sort of play this role then, like this whole consent story?
Yeah, I think it's definitely difficult to try and get the tone right, because you don't want to offend anybody, you don't want to upset anybody, and also you want to deliver truth, because there'll be lots and lots of real victims of this. Mm-hmm. And I think as somebody who's watching the show, if you've experienced this, you want to see the characters who are playing the storyline do it justice, because it has to be dealt with a sense of sensitivity and a sense of care around the subject, because you don't want people laughing about it or taking the mick out of it, because this really happens.
It's real life, yeah, definitely.
Exactly. And I think that was my main worry. It was about getting it right, because you don't want to fail somebody.
I was going to ask, this might be quite hard now, so if you could only work with 3 people from the show for the rest of your life, who would they be and why?
Oh God, that is a difficult one. I'd definitely say Harriet, who plays Summer, because I think she's a brilliant actress, one of my best friends, and great fun. Mm-hmm. So I just think every time I see her on my call sheet, I'm always happy to go in. I always know it's going to be a good day. Mm-hmm. And then I'd probably have to say Simon and Kate, who play Steve and Tracy. Again, it's just kind of always a really good mix. I feel like we always have a laugh on set and we always have a good day. And I feel like no two scenes ever the same, even though, you know, you can have all the same people in it and even similar lines sometimes, but it's never the same. And I feel like that's something that they bring to the show, which is just entirely unique.
Do you fancy outdoing Ken Barlow for the longest amount of time on the show, or do you think you've got different things lying ahead?
It's always a difficult one to answer, but I would just say don't fix something that isn't broken, because at present I'm very happy in my job. I love doing what I'm doing. I love going to work with the people I work with, and I've been given some really great storylines which you can really get your teeth into. I'm working lots. I'm very fortunate in that aspect. So it would be silly to say that I wouldn't even consider it. But then also, who knows what's out there? Who knows what job's around the corner? So it's difficult to say what the future holds. But I think I would quite like to do other things. But also...
The BBC chairman Richard Sharp has resigned from his role for facilitating a loan for former Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Ian Smith joins us today in the studio to give out the latest. What's been happening, Ian?
BBC Chairman Richard Sharp has resigned after a report found he did not disclose conflicts of interest during his appointment. The report found that he failed to disclose 2 perceived conflicts of interest. First, by telling Mr Johnson he wanted to apply for the BBC role before doing so, and second, by telling the PM he intended to set up a meeting between Mr Blythe and Mr Case. The report notes Mr Sharp does not accept the first conclusion, but apologised for the second. As the local 2023 elections approach, Labour targets rural voters in deepest North Warwickshire. The rising cost of living is one of the issues the Labour Party has put at the forefront of its local election campaign. Along with the NHS and tackling crime, is this a new Labour strategy, targeting blue wall seats to counterbalance the red wall seats it lost in the north? The Borough Council has been controlled by Conservatives since 2015 and elects all of its councillors every 4 years, with 35 seats up for grabs, so 18 is the number of seats needed to take control.
Thank you, Ian. Now, if you have made plans for your bank holiday, the first thing you want to know is if you're preparing for the rain or sun.
Here is Sabrina FM with the weather forecast.
Temperatures today in Salford will reach a high of 16 degrees and a low of 8 degrees. Today will be very cloudy, but Salford won't be seeing rain until the weekend with an 80% chance. Sabrina FM, Quays News, Salford.
That's all we have for you today. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.
Goodbye.